these are some serious gigs. I always feel arrogant in sunglasses, but these just take it to a new level. When you're in the shop trying on something like this, I put stuff on my face. Like I already don't like wearing sunglasses, but I put stuff on my face like this, and I just sort of convince myself in the moment that there will be a time and place or an event that these will come in handy. And I can't think of any time, place or event where they would be necessary. But I was wearing them yesterday on the bike actually, and they felt like really good running and cycling sunglasses, like something a little bit normal. Like when I see super sporty sunglasses, sometimes I wear them for running, and there's definitely a time to wear sunglasses in races, because it's to do with energy, and the energy that you save through not kind of like squinting or having to kind of protect your eyes from the sun. And it's obviously good for, I guess it's good for crow's feet and stuff like that around your eyes and protecting your eyes, etc. But yeah, they were awesome yesterday. Anyway, to the point, and the question that I was asked yesterday about Passatore. Now, for me, Passatore is a famous Italian race. It's a really big race in Europe. It's 100k from Firenze to Faenza. Firenze is Florence, and it passes over a mountain range. It's literally 40k flat, 10k uphill, 10k downhill, and then 40k, a lot of it in the dark, to Faenza. And it's one hell of a race. Like, if you ever have the chance to do a race, an ultra race, and you want to run on the road, and you want to run, I like running beautiful races on the road. So that's why I'm obsessed with Subida Pico Valletta in Spain. I'm obsessed with Passatore, and Comrades as well. It's super beautiful. 90k, 89k from Durban to St. Petersburg, and reverse, up and down years. And this falls into that category with lots of history. I first read about it in one of my idols' book. It's called The Stubborn Scotsman by Don Ritchie, who's the last person who's the last person to win at Passatore before I won it. Just thought I'd get that in there just to let you know some context. And he goes into a lot of detail in the book, and unless you're really into running, it's probably too much detail. So, you know, which is why the book isn't mainstream. I guess people who are writing running books these days, they kind of like to talk about, and me too, I like to talk about the psychology of running, the mentality of running, and how that essentially mirrors, how the skill set mirrors real life. And it's, you know, running is the perfect metaphor for life. And then it can be like a motivation book or a self-help book, and it doesn't necessarily need to be about running. I think Goggins' book is probably touches upon running, but more to do with mentality. Anyway, lots of detail in the book, but there's a couple of chapters in there where he talks about going from literally a tiny little village in Scotland where he was a teacher, take the train or bus to either Edinburgh or Glasgow. I think it was Edinburgh. Take a train from Edinburgh to London, a train across to France, and then a train to Italy. I mean, mind-blowing. Like, it pisses me off when I have to get on a flight for 8 hours in order to go to a race. And, you know, a couple of years ago when I was trying to quickly kind of pivot and trying to do a race in the States, the traveling from Thailand was like Thailand to Dubai to somewhere in Europe to north of North America, and then to Arizona. And it was just, when I got there, I was kind of all over the show. I don't know how Don Ritchie was feeling on those train journeys. Hopefully he was able to get his head down, and it was just like, you know, great sleep. But those were the days back then. There was no super shoes. There's no kind of like special formulas for drinks. There was no kind of like Gatonis and carb loading and all that you have today. They weren't running on anything that was even remotely close to a decent everyday running shoe. It was old school stuff. So the fact that he was able to do that 41 years ago was unbelievable, and that really inspired not just me to do the race, but to follow the journey not to take a train from Scotland to Italy, but to go and kind of follow his journey. And when you go to Passatore, the Italians love Don Ricci, and they love those big battles that he had against Domingo Catalan and Vito Meloni. I'm really sorry if I got that wrong. And those types of battles, and it was just different. The stories that he had within, awesome. And you know, he always had a cyclist with him, as the top runners in the race do. So you have a cyclist with you, and they're able to give you your drinks along the way. And there's a story that he's in the kind of plaza, where the race starts in Firenze, and the guy who's helping him. And I've been in these situations where it's like, the guy helping you, you've got to kind of like try to converse in a mixture of English and Italian, and you're trying to tell them that you've been essentially training for the last 10 years, specific for the last 4, 5, 6 months, and that the nutrition that they have in their bag on the bike is crucial to you having a good performance. Trying to have that at the same time as sort of getting ready for the race. So it's a difficult situation. The best way to do it is what anybody with a brain would do these days, which is much easier than Don's time, which would be to take somebody over there to help you. So that's what I'd certainly be doing in the future. So anyway, how would you prepare for this? Now, I don't want to overcomplicate this, because I don't think it is overcomplicated. You've got to, long story short, you've got to be good on the flat. You've got to be able to go long on the flat, so you've got to be used to that kind of, you've got to make your quads robust, because they're going to be using it's very, very similar muscle groups as you're running, similar cadence, similar stride length for hours and hours and hours. I'm not sure what your finish time is, but for me it was just over 7 hours, and you know, it takes its toll on your quads. You've got to be a good uphill runner, and you've got to be a good downhill runner, and it's almost like you've got to be not just a good downhill runner, but you've also got to have conditioned your quads well enough so that last 40k into Faenza, you've already done 60k, which has included 10k uphill, 10k downhill, and that 10k downhill, and it's 10k downhill at a severe kind of gradient, like 7-8%, and you've got some really, really, really steep sections. Not in terms of like if you look at a Stelvio or something like that, but stuff that will hurt your quads if you're not ready for it. And then you've got like a 5 kilometer after that, which is like slightly downhill. So you've got to be really well prepared for that. So essentially you've got to be good on the flat, good going uphill, and good going downhill. End of video, really. But what I would do to prepare for it is, I was just looking back on my training program for so I won it in May 2022. Obviously COVID 2020, 2021, did loads of training, very, very little racing. So the racing that I did do, I won a race in 2021 in Subito Pico Valletta. I've always focused, for the last 10 years, I've always focused on going uphill. I literally, my first ultra was Subito Pico Valletta, 50k uphill. I fell in love with Granada, I fell in love with the race, I moved to Granada, and I just trained on the course as much as I possibly could do, at least once a week, if not twice a week. All my hill reps, all my long hill runs would be done on the course. So I was just obsessed with trying to win that race, which eventually happened, and I have the course record. Again, I'm bragging. But I already felt strong on the uphill, so I just needed to kind of keep that as I was working up towards Passatore, and especially as the training got very specific in the final 3 months. I just wanted to maintain my strength going uphill, but my focus was the downhill. I already had the endurance. I spent loads of time on the bike. That's another really big tip. Spend a lot of time on the bike, because there's only so many long runs you can do. There's only so many times you can go out and run 4 hours. You can be on the bike for 4 hours every day and not even think about it. If you build up a level of fitness and you've got the muscular endurance there, it's a brilliant long run. And what you don't hear a lot is, as a runner, if you've got the bike fit right, on the bike you can be working on the uphill muscles, so you can become a good uphill runner just by cycling, or at least having that as a major part of your cycling on a flat, having it as a major part of your training, and then working on your uphill running as well. So that's really important. So my focus was downhill. I was a bad downhill runner just because I'd not trained for it, which is it's a bit weird really, because what I noticed when I was doing a lot more downhill, and I'm talking, I literally started with 30 seconds downhill, like 6, 7, 8% gradient, 30 seconds downhill, and just started it as if I was starting running for the first time, as if you were starting to train uphill. So I was just starting to make sure toe, ankle, knee, hip is all aligned. I'll always say that for any running, whether it's uphill or flat, but for the downhill, if it's not aligned, knee joint is complicated, and if you land wrong on your foot, if your toe is facing out, if your toe is facing in, the MCL and the ACL, they're just kind of, they're not, the knee is not a good invention. So you've got to work on your downhill technique as much as your downhill running, as much as conditioning the quads. I worked on becoming a decent downhill runner. I'm still not a good downhill runner, but what I wanted to do is make sure that I wasn't losing time on the guys. And my plan for Passatore was to go out, take it really easy for the first 50k, hold on to people on the downhill, hold on to the leaders, and then run a fast last kind of 40k, 42k. That was my plan. And then all of a sudden I find myself in the lead with, always happens in these big races, people go off fast, maybe because they want TV time. So I passed a couple of guys that were kind of first, second, third, and they'd just gone out way too fast. You know, after 25k, if you're sweating loads, and it's hot in that square where you start, it's really hot in Firenze. So you've got to keep yourself out of the shadow. And again, for me, it's the perfect race because if it's hot in May, and it usually is, because it's kind of like pretty southern Italy, or at least midway in Italy, I think. Just trying to think. The boot, kicking the football, I think it is. Then heat training really helped me out. So when I'm seeing a lot of guys sweating, I'll often be in a group and just check people out and just think, you know, if they're sweating, if they're already losing salt, if they're already kind of becoming dehydrated, and I'm still cool, I've got an advantage. And that's it, like psychologically it's a big edge. And then we kind of I just hit a point where I hit the lead, and then all of a sudden you've got the lead car behind you, and then you've got the TV camera there. For the majority of it, the TV camera felt as if it was there all the time watching me. And then the guys behind me were like, you can't take your bottle, the race director, you can't take your bottle, you can't take your bottle from cyclists. And we were like, it's got to be every 5k. By this point it's nearly 40 degrees, 35, 40 degrees. And so yeah, it's a cracking race, but that's what you need to get right in order to execute that race really well. You need to build your endurance, and you need to build your hill running, build intervals. Again, start both uphill and downhill, and you can obviously do this in the same session, but start with minute intervals or 30-second intervals, up and down. Don't just jog the downhills, get used to running the downhills. There's no other way to condition the quads but running downhill. And what you'll find is, not only are they robust for the downhill, but it's also really going to help you out for a flat as well. So you're going to become a good ultra marathon runner, good marathon runner. So yeah, those are the things. So work on your stamina, endurance, get on the bike. It's really going to help you, especially kind of that uphill section, but it's just going to help you with your endurance. Work on your hill reps, gradually build from 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 10-minute intervals. Be doing an interval session once a week. Be doing a long run that's specific to the race course once a week. So if you're in the region, or if you're anywhere in Italy, France, Spain, you're going to be in a place where you could quite easily do a 25k run, where you do 5k on the flat, 7.5k up, 7.5k down, 5k on the flat. How easy is that? And then you do that as your long run, and then you gradually increase the amount of time on the flat and the amount of time running up and running down every week. It really isn't rocket science. It's just consistency and always think about risk reward. So what's the objective of the session? So keep all your easy runs and recovery runs super easy, so that you can really hammer Really focus on the interval session, because it's going to be a different type of interval session if you're already following some structure. Really focus on the long run. And I'd say that you need to get fit and get specifically fit towards hill running up and down, and then do a 10-12 week specific block of training towards Passatore, and then you're good to go. See you in Faenza.